Hi, I'm Tomas Cortez. Remember that in HRpreneur, we will talk about entrepreneurship, culture, diversity, equity and inclusion, digital transformation, agility, innovation, and all those things transforming the talent in organizations and, therefore, people's lives. So, do not forget to fasten your seatbelt because on this journey, we will travel beyond our limits and rationality with a profound exploration of our higher purpose. I hope this episode helps you develop new ideas and well-being for everyone around you. Okay, thank you, dear community of HRpreneur. We are back here in another episode with amazing colleagues of AMS, and it's a good time to spend some time with you again. And well, during this news episode, we are going to discuss a topic that maybe you have heard a lot of stops during this time, because we are going to talk about artificial intelligence. And as you know, artificial intelligence has become one of the most technological trends that have disrupted all industries in 2023. Therefore, we are discussing the artificial intelligence impact on talent acquisition, because artificial intelligence is quickly becoming a valuable tool for recruiters and hiring managers, helping improve the quality and speed of the hiring process. In addition, artificial intelligence is making recruiters more efficient, helping them find and assess the best candidate faster than ever before. And in this episode, we'll look at how artificial intelligence transforms talent acquisition, how it can create better outcomes for recruiters, hiring managers, and job seekers alike. Also, we are going to gather magnificent insights from our guests to apply a holistic approach in talent acquisition that impacts the primary business goals like agility, growth, and innovation. So for me, it's a pleasure to have two extraordinary colleagues with us to help us to understand artificial intelligence holistically. Nicole, Brender, Brandis, and Luke Kohlrieser. With these two visions, we will have the opportunity to dive into the rationality of artificial intelligence and the human side of this technology. Welcome, my colleagues. Welcome, not only my colleagues, because they are my friends, dear friends. I appreciate your time for sharing your knowledge and experience with the audience. But before to dive into in those topics and in these questions, I would like to turn over the microphone to you because, well, we are going to do this in a different way in which we have done in other podcasts, because I would like that you introduce yourself because you have amazing credentials that I would like to share with our audience. Nicole, could you like to introduce yourself with our audience?
Yeah, thank you, Tomas. Hi, audience. My name is Nicole Brender Brandis, and I am the head of strategy advisory for AMS in the Americas. I have about 30 years of industry and consulting experience in human resources with a focus that's broadly on talent strategies. I've worked across industries, so I've been in high tech, engineering, healthcare and life sciences, consumer products, and the energy and chemicals industries, and have had a great opportunity to lead talent-related efforts on almost every continent, including Europe, the Middle East, North America, and Latin and South America. I have a strategic focus with practical hands-on experience building and leading award-winning talent acquisition functions that really help businesses achieve positive outcomes. I have my SPHR certification. I've worked as both a COE leader as well as an HR business partner. And I am certified in facilitation and training, change management, and Six Sigma. My undergraduate is from the University of Colorado, and I have an executive leadership certificate from the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. And I call Cape Coral, Florida, home. Thank you, Tomas.
Thank you, Nicole, for sharing your credentials. And Luke, Please share your background.
Yeah, thanks, Tomas. I won't hold the University of Michigan certificate against Nicole, even with my love of Ohio State. But enough about that. So I'm Luke Kohlrieser. I've spent the last 15 years in the talent acquisition space and really started there while I was in college. I was looking for a part-time opportunity, applied to be a recruiter. So that really opened the world of TA up to me. Spent a couple of years in some various operator roles in both recruitment and sourcing. And then upon graduation, was able to put my economics degree to use as I transitioned to the tech side of the business, where I was involved in building out reporting and analytics function for an RPO and MSP business that I was at the time. So I think some of the really cool things that I got to do there was get to see the experience and process and really understand a lot of different blue chip companies when it comes to TA. And with that, I also got involved on the tech side of the business, and that's where I'm at today. So I sit as one of the leads within our tech and analytics advisory practice at AMS, where we're providing consultation advisory services to clients on all things technology, from helping them select and plan for their TA tech to the implementation, optimization, ongoing support. So I just overall really enjoy helping clients with their TA tech needs.
Thanks, Luke. Thank Nicole for sharing your background and your experience. And definitely that will be important during this journey in this talk, because your experience will help our audience to get more insights about this amazing topic in which we are going to discuss in a couple of minutes. But yeah, definitely, as you mentioned, your credentials used to add, well, yeah, as our audience knows, because they listen our last podcast, well, AMS, talent is our goal, and we are working on that in this company. You're supporting companies to produce better talent acquisition strategies to improve the overall human resources field. Thanks again, team. And well, ready to know, audience, how the artificial intelligence is impacting talent acquisition. But before we dive into the impact of artificial intelligence on this on talent acquisition, I would like to let's take a step and discuss what artificial intelligence is. And for that, we have heard tons of news about artificial intelligence during this time, especially with GPT. And nowadays, Google also launched Bardo, the other tool in artificial intelligence. But what exactly is artificial intelligence? And if you could provide an example of where you have implementing, please don't reveal your secret weapons of artificial intelligence, because that is something that the audience would like to explore in the future.
Yeah. No, I mean, as you mentioned, there's certainly a ton of buzz around AI, and there's not a day that goes by, there's not an article on the news or a post or a podcast where we're talking about the topic. It's hard to escape. It's everywhere. And I think the fascination with it comes from several different things. First off, it's really cool. I mean, some of the things that ChatGPT and Bard that you mentioned are doing, it's just really, really exciting. And the possibilities and opportunities that that's creating is creating some excitement. But I also think there's a little bit of mystery involved too, that's adding to that excitement. So that mystery is creating some just general curiosity and kind of a thirst for knowledge, or a thirst to help people understand the topic. And, so what is it? I'm going to go on a little bit of a side here, but we'll make it back to AI. So I'm sure everyone has seen a Disney or a Pixar movie, Mickey Mouse, Cars, Finding Nemo, Bug's Life, it goes on. And these are, on every day at my house with a 5 and 3-year-old. And I think if we pick a character from any movie, let's say, I don't know, Lightning McQueen from the red sports car from the Cars movie. To tell the story, the Pixar team really gives Lightning McQueen some humanistic features. He's talking to other characters. He's making decisions. He's listening to those other characters and reacting upon it. And all of this, he's a car. So at the base of it, it's a car. And Pixar is giving them, those human qualities, and that's what we call anthropomorphication. So you can think about AI in a similar way. It's giving human intelligence to a machine or a computer, and those machines and computers are programmed to perform certain actions. So language translation, making decisions, visual recognition, speech recognition. So AI, or artificial intelligence, is teaching a machine or a computer to really learn and make decisions or perform actions based upon information that that computer receives. As far as how I use AI, it's in my life every day. And I think if you take a step back, you'll probably find that you're interacting with AI much more than you think you are. So when I wake up in the morning, walk into the bathroom, I'll tell the Google Home that's sitting in there, good morning. And from there, a series of actions is triggered. It's turning on my lights downstairs. It's going to adjust my thermostat down. It's telling me the day's weather, and it begins playing the news. So it's using AI to recognize my voice and interact and make decisions that I programmed within the computer. After that, I'm coming in, I'm logging in my computer, I'm going to my calendar for the day. I don't have to sift through a bunch of spam email because AI has filtered out those spam emails from my inbox. So again, that's AI. Mentioned before, I have two kids. Their grandmother is always asking for pictures of the kids. I'll pull up my iPhone, and all I have to do is type in Nene, who my kids affectionately call their grandmother, and Connor, my oldest son, will type their names in, and then my phone's going to automatically give me pictures of the two of them together. And again, that's all AI. So as you can see, really hard to go about avoiding or interacting with AI on a daily basis.
Okay, definitely. I know that, as you mentioned, well, I suppose that artificial intelligence is improving people's life nowadays or during these days. But in general, in talent acquisition, Nicole, CHROs and business leaders always look for efficiencies. But something that we have seen, or people are looking, is to cure some of the issues that they are living, not only in talent acquisition, also in our general life. But is artificial intelligence the miracle cure for all the pains to improve HR operations, or is artificial intelligence only a piece of the puzzle to continue improving in these areas? But what exactly artificial intelligence could do to the HR issues?
So I think, Luke brought up a couple of movies there, and I think probably contrary to what the movies would have us believe, it is really unlikely that AI will ever solve all of the issues of humankind. So I guess the short answer is no. I think AI is unlikely to be an HR panacea on its own. But that said, I think there are really a lot of valuable use cases for both what I'd call pure play RPA or automation type technology, and then more broad AI solutions within both HR and talent acquisition specifically. And honestly, we could probably spend the whole hour just unpacking use cases. But at a high level, when I think of RPA or robotic process automation, it's really appropriate for any work that you have in talent acquisition that's highly standardized, that's well documented, it's rules-based, and it's done in really high volumes. So when you think about like a lot of the back office tasks that are required to move requisitions through step and status, as an example, and from a certain step, it would trigger an activity. Those are the kinds of things where automation can really step in and perform some of those really repetitive tasks. And I think one that I see a lot is a change in the hire date, right? This happens way more often than we'd like to admit. And it really becomes quite a hassle because once a hire date is set in the system, all sorts of downstream activities happen. But you can use automation when there is a start date change to help trigger off and adjust adjust activities, I should say, that are downstream from that start date from there. Then when you look at AI, on the other hand, which is really more about what Luke talked to, is this concept that a machine is learning, that really starts to touch on some of the aspect of the process that are more human-centric, especially when you think about the front end of screening or performing certain steps at the beginning. So I know Luke can likely share a whole lot more, but I think specific technologies will not only do things like fetch and rank your candidates, but they're also going to provide advice, if you will, to both the employer and the candidate about potential other roles, things that might be adjacent to the jobs that they're looking at, but may be able to leverage their skills. There are products that employ conversational AI and text, so they can actually do the pre-screening of candidates over their cell phone and really contextualize answers out of that. You mentioned ChatGPT. That's been introduced and has some really interesting use cases. But I think the important thing, and you keep hearing me say the use cases, is you need to figure out what parts you want and need and get value from before AI or automation can solve any issues.
Got it, Nicole. Thanks for sharing that for our audience. And definitely some questions that people has been asking me here in Mexico is, do I need to be worried about the robots taking over my job? I suppose that is no, but what do you think? Before to jump into the question with this answer, I suppose that is not, because we'll help to improve the human life, but we're not taking over the jobs. Is that right, or I'm incorrect?
Yeah, I think the reality is, right, there's this whole discussion about the future of talent acquisition, and I think the answer is no. Robots are not going to take over people's jobs, because when you think about recruiting at a very fundamental aspect, I read some research a long time ago, but actually changing jobs is one of the 5 most stressful things that a person can go through. And at times in our life when we have stress and important decisions to make, having a computer be our only point of interaction is going to probably be highly ineffective in actually the connection, that human part of recruiting that makes people feel that I've made the right decision, that I have the information that I need, that I understand the people that I would be working with. And while I see AI and automation helping get some of the tactical blocking and tackling pieces of the process done, at the end of the day, we're dealing with human beings in a very stressful time in their life. Even if they're choosing to change jobs on their own accord, it's still stressful to make that change. So I think no, they will not ever fully replace the human in this equation.
No, thanks, Nicole, for sharing that, because some of our audience asked me, please ask that question to your audience, because we are so worried in Mexico. I know that in Mexico, or in general, in worldwide, there are some countries that are advancing faster than other countries. But the reality is that technology is arriving faster to the worldwide in the different countries. But thanks for sharing that.
Well, and I will add to that in terms of, these kinds of things have been around forever. Honestly, I think they viewed the first automation to be like self-help gas pumps at gas station. You no longer had to go into the store. There was no longer a person who sat and pumped your car and washed your windshields. But those people didn't necessarily lose their job. But what it did is it redefined the work that they were doing. So when we saw self-help gas pumps, what we also saw was a huge introduction of the convenience store. And that is, now I'd like to go in and I'd like to buy a drink, I maybe want to get some candy, whatever it might be. And so those people who worked out at the pump now were working inside that convenience store. So I think technology may do jobs that humans have done before, but what it does is opens us up to do different work that is more unique to a human being able to do it.
Got it.
And I think even on that regard, it's that front end, when we talked about, what is AI, you have to have somebody that's training this model or giving some basis of decisions that the model is making. So that is in itself, you're going to still need that people input. Now, there's some technologies that are moving away to having a computer, completely modeled, unsupervised learning, if you will. But I think the ones that are really going to succeed are the ones that you're having that human experience being layered in and working alongside, as Nicole said, the recruiter, the sourcer, the operator that's that's functioning in that role.
Good insights for our audience with your knowledge, to know more about artificial intelligence. And look, after these insights that Nicole shared with us, what is the other potential impacts of ChatGPT or other artificial intelligence technologies in talent acquisition field? What is the potential impact, and how disruptive could it be for the way companies are operating now? You have mentioned some examples, but you could give us a little more insights about this?
The impact and potential for impact with ChatGPT is definitely going to be felt within the TA field. I think given how new the actual introduction of ChatGPT is relatively, I think November of 2022, it was rolled out to the public. It's really gained, a large following and a large popularity. But I think we're still in the early stages of what that's going to do and how it's being implemented in the TA field. And I think if we, kind of pause a little bit and think, GPT is a specific brand of a large language model or an AI model. And it's generative pre-trained transformer, or simply put, generative AI. So ChatGPT, if you think about it, is to generative AI as Pepsi is to a generic cola. So it's just the brand of generative AI. And I think, when we look forward to there's vendors in the space that are starting to introduce some things in the platform. And I think some of that initial introduction is really a push to be the first to do it, or a push to be the leading or the pioneering technology platform that is introducing ChatGPT. While some of the stuff that they're doing is really on a conceptual level is really interesting, I think the actual impact, we're still a little bit of ways away from actually ingraining that in some of the technologies that exist today. But I think if we think forward and we see things start to evolve, that generative AI piece is really going to allow for some greater customization and personalization through the TA process. So today, there's a lot of, within an applicant tracking system or within a VMS or another tool, a lot of the automated emails are pre-written emails or templatized emails that may pull in your first name or may pull in the position title. But I see the level of customization and tailoring to a particular candidate or prospect being much, much greater with the use of generative AI. So they can use the learnings of the person and really bring out that level of customization through that personalized experience. I think another way we're seeing some companies start to look at is the crafting of job descriptions. So I think today hiring managers are struggling. How do I best articulate the skill set that I need for somebody to be successful in a role? And oftentimes, if I think about processes that I've heard companies doing that we're working with, they're taking a copy from a peer or a colleague, and then they're modifying it to what they think they need. And I think the generative AI can really be like that co-pilot in helping define and articulate what skills are actually needed within that role, to be able to put that in the job description to attract more candidates. And then I think, just think some high level other concepts as I was thinking through the question is, you could really look at learning and training plans, growing, customizing how we are to learning and enabling individuals within an organization to take on the next role within that organization, creating of interview guides, enhancing the chatbot experience. So we've had chatbot conversational AI for a while, but we can really look to see that build upon with some of that generative text. And then also helping with content creation when it comes to EVP. So I've mentioned a couple ways that I see it helping the recruiter and sourcer side, but I also see it helping the candidate side as well, which I think is something that's really exciting, is really helping them identify their skills and what could be transferred, and helping them start to generate some resumes. And some organizations are still requiring cover letters, helping generate some cover letters, but also helping identifying what's the optimal opportunity for me as an individual. So really excited to see how that tech really starts to be adopted and used within the space.
No, definitely, Luke, and that will help. You mentioned something that will help companies inside of the companies, but also outside of the companies, to improve that experience with the candidates, artificial intelligence, to connect in a more human way with the candidates outside. Definitely, that will be amazing help for improve the strategies for the companies. But something that comes to my mind, because Nicole, you answered this question that all the people is worried about robots taking over the jobs. But in contrast, what kind of skills, not only recruiters, maybe these people with this sentence or with these insights of Luke shared with us, what kind of skills human beings need to learn, or recruiters need to learn to make to adopt all these changes with artificial intelligence?
The skills for the recruiter, I don't think actually change all that much. I mean, for decades, we've been talking about the recruiter as advisor, and this concept that we could bring a more value add to the business. And the reality was some of the administrivia, or what I call the administrivia of the job, really made it hard for a recruiter to actually deliver on that promise, right? Because they had so much other work on their desk that they were bogged down in. So I think for the recruiter, it really is the chance to say, look, we've taken a lot of that administration away. The tool now does all kinds of things it could never do, certainly 30 years ago when I held Rex as a recruiter, but it is a chance for them to truly step into an advisory capacity. So for the recruiter, I see that as like a significant increase in their business acumen. They need to be able to talk about all aspects of the business, how they make money, what their product is, what their market and their competitors are, and they need to know how talent plays a part and be able to have really intelligent conversations with business leaders about the relationship between talent and business outcomes. So again, we've talked about that for decades now. Now you actually have time to do it. So there are some skills that go with being an advisor. I do think that one of the roles that actually will change in terms of the need is that of the sourcer. So if you think that traditionally a sourcer is a rec-focused person who supports a recruiter behind the scenes, but it's really rec-based. And then you start thinking about what these tools that can go out and they can fetch in the universe of data. They can get profiles, they can examine the job requisition, they can determine who are the best matches, they can tell you how likely they are to be successful. That role of the sourcer has almost become obsolete as defined that way. But that's not to say it's still not an incredibly critical role to the organization. But how I think their skills start to shift is that we see a sourcer as the marketer. So this is somebody who knows how to map talent in the marketplace. They know how to target very specific profiles and engage with them in a very systemic manner. I mean, think about a headhunter, if you will, right? An agency recruiter, and those truly targeted hunt mentality of finding talent. But further to that, when I say the marketing portion of that, is the concept that they need to not only be able to map where this talent is and what's happening in the marketplace, they need to be able to nurture those people so that eventually they want to do what we would call activate and become an applicant into the system. And so when you think about the sourcer now, right, a lot of times they're handling inbound flow. They might be working LinkedIn and setting up some searches there, maybe going to job boards. But we're now talking about a much more strategic position that they take in knowing and mapping the talent market externally and know how to build and nurture relationships with those people. So if you think about that, recruiting is a sales team, really. I know that we sit in HR, but recruiting is sales. And what good sales organization isn't backed up by a really strong marketing group? And that's really where I think the sourcers can start to play a different role, or they'll start to see that evolve if they adopt technology fully.
Got it. Thanks, Nicole, for those insights. Definitely. And this lead me to the other question for Luke, because you mentioned that, well, sourcing will be primarily the role that maybe will change adopting these new technologies, but the sourcers sometimes need to dive into the data to produce better results, and also, definitely to give that advice to the business to provide better insights about the candidates that they are looking for. But look, many companies have a ton of data, especially we know that in TA, we generate a ton of data through the end-to-end process. But main concern I have heard from the TA leads and stakeholders, not only the TA leads are worried about that, is how they can harness all the data and transform in insights to achieve the business goals like organizational agility, growth, and innovation.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. When we look at the recruitment process, you have a vast amount of information from a transactional standpoint. You have information on the candidate. With the introduction of some of these AI tools, we're getting inference data that's coming in, access to additional information that's available on the candidate out on the web. So that's a ton of information that's coming into the organization, and the organizations that are able to effectively harness that data into actionable insights. So what do we do about this is really going to help guide business decisions, and that's going to help just overall benefit to the organization. It's something that all organizations, from enterprise companies to smaller to mid-sized organizations, could really benefit from. And some of the projects that we've done in regards to data and analytics have really helped companies complete that goal. And when we look at that project, it begins with an assessment of where they're at today, and then looking ahead to where they could be. So we look at, what data is available, where is it stored, how do they access it, what tech and systems are aligned to collect that pieces of information, and then more importantly, what problem or what area do we want to explore or to try to solve, and then what actions do we ultimately want to incentivize. So do we want to incentivize bringing more candidates into the top of the funnel from a recruitment standpoint, and that's requiring more of that sourcing marketing piece that Nicole was talking about? Or do we want to focus on the applicants we have, but really look at the quality and transferable skills within? So it really comes down to the strategic decision of what is the goal, and then aligning the data to give the insights to drive to it. So that's all around data strategy there. And then from there, it goes into the design, the extraction, the actual build of the reports.
And I know that you are a great expert in that, and maybe if you are interested, or audience, if you have listened to this podcast and are interested to know more about data, well, Luke is a great expert providing support to the companies. But and well, adding more, another question here is that I have read some surveys applied to HR professionals of all these companies outside of the HR field, revealed that the most challenging task for recruiters, maybe, I don't know if those surveys are correct, screening candidates. I don't know, what do you think about, but can artificial intelligence solve this to select candidates faster? Luke, and then Nicole, I would like to hear if can this technology, this artificial intelligence technology, could solve the unintentional bias, or what other actions do we need to look after to reduce the unintentional bias if artificial intelligence is not solving this issue for the companies or for recruiters? Luke?
Luke, you want to go?
I
Luke,
can start off, and then we'll hand it over to Nicole. So I think, having conversations with colleagues within AMS, but also conducting interviews of organizations that we're supporting, that's right. The recruiters and sourcers are mentioning that needing to sift through resumes and review them, and process candidates as being one of the most timely parts of their job. I think for companies with a really well-established EVP, they're getting a ton of candidates coming in. The amount of resumes, it's substantial. And I've heard of some organizations putting a limit on the number of resumes that could come in. They turn off the application at a certain point just because they're getting inundated with so many applications. So something it does present a challenge for recruiters and team to review. I think a study that I saw was the average review that recruiters takes to look at the initial pass of a resume is between 7 and 11 seconds. 7 and 11 seconds.
Oh my
That's
God.
so quick if you think about it in the grand scheme of things. And when I think about that 7 to 11 seconds, how well are they actually being able to make some of those skills inferences on a profile fit? And that's where I think we can bring in an AI to help leverage some of the opportunities. And there's vendors currently doing in the space, Eightfold, HireScore, Phenom, Beamer, Avature, and there's many more that I probably didn't mention there, but they all have AI to help do that initial review of an open role and give a score against fit to the opportunity and start to do some skill inferencing. And that's where I think at the top of the funnel of that initial resume review is really going to build out the level of depth of that review and help identify talent that may have passed through after that quick pass that the recruiters had done historically.
Okay, Nicole, could you share with us this unintentional bias question?
So I have to laugh at this one a little bit because with regards to can AI solve for bias, I'll give you the very consulting answer and I'll say maybe. I think there's two issues with AI. First is it's programmed by a human being.
Yeah.
And second, right, Luke talked about this concept that it learns. But the fact of the matter is it learns from human beings, which means anything that we have that may have been a bias may be programmed into it and or learned by it because it's learning from us. So as a result, I think, frankly, you could almost have bias built in and learned. So I do think you have to pair it with other changes so that it is taught, if you will, in a different manner that would help remove that bias. So I think, for example, some of the things that may lead to unconscious bias in a person's profile, right? It could be their name. It could be the city or part of town that they live in. It could be the academic institutions that they went to, the employers that they have worked with. All of these things, all of these data points can introduce bias. But if you used, for example, some type of a redaction tool, so you're truly reading these more blind and that initial screen is done independent of those kinds of data points, you could potentially then teach in a less biased way by doing that. And I think that's a big cultural change because quite often, if you look at even how we structure some of our HR programs, right, we pick strategic universities. And so we put a lot of emphasis on the university that somebody attended. But we have to see a shift in that if you're going to truly remove that kind of bias. So I think without kind of a clear understanding of the algorithm behind the tool, and then modifying the human behavior that it's learning from, there is still some risk that AI will have this unintentional bias. I think that's why you start to see laws that are being passed with the intent of trying to protect candidates about what is this machine? What is it using as its basis for making decisions? And I think that, to me, is at least a really interesting difference for technology, right? Is that the tech, if you look at the plane, if you will, the technology, it's meteoric, right? It's shooting up into the stars daily almost. And as individuals, we have all really grabbed onto that, right? We mostly have smartphones, new apps come out, new TVs come out. I can now talk to my refrigerator, right? As individuals, we're used to it. But I think the lagging piece is business and legislation. And so we're in this zone of trying to figure out everything that AI might be able to do, while at the same time trying to figure out how do we make sure that it doesn't introduce some unintended consequences, which I guess is a really long answer to your question. But I think just saying that it can remove bias is probably a little too simplistic.
Something that comes to my mind with this reflection, Nicole, is for me that I am a father of 2 children. Artificial intelligence is like educating a children. At this moment, artificial intelligence is a child who is learning from us how to perform and is learning a lot of stuff about the human being, feeding all that information. And then maybe this artificial intelligence will become as a teenager who maybe could rebel to the human beings, and then an adult that maybe could adopt all these new learnings that has been feeding through the human beings. Yeah, definitely. And that is something that came to my mind when you are sharing this in a reflection, like a children.
Yeah. I think in that example too, if we go down that case, there's 2 areas where bias could be introduced in AI. It's in the child example, you could teach your child to be biased, but they also could observe some of your unconscious bias that may happen in an interaction and absorb that and learn that there. So you have to make sure to look out for both of those areas as you're introducing AI.
Yeah, definitely. So great. Okay, well, we are moving forward, and I've been enjoying this talk, and I know that in the future we are gonna discuss more topics with these 2 amazing guests. But yeah, no, I know that Nicole will share with us another great topic in the future. But because we are gonna discuss something about that we call a skill-based organization in a future podcast audience. Please, community, wait for us in a future podcast. But in the meantime, Cole, I would like that you could give to our audience a sneak peek about how artificial intelligence is helping organizations transform them from job-based to skill-based organizations.
Yeah, so this one, you could get me going, Tomas. I don't come with breaks when I start talking about skills-based organizations, but I'll leave it really narrow to the scope of your question. I think about how is tech helping, and I think probably one of the obvious ways, and frankly, maybe one of the ways that organizations need the most help is with a skills ontology, if you will, or a structure of that. We have seen over years and years that organizations have gotten, thousands of job descriptions. Their job architecture is virtually non-existent. Luke talked about how managers are making up their job descriptions off of a friend's and that, right? So in a lot of ways, we've lost control there. But doing a job architecture project is a huge and very significant lift for HR. I think that what technology products are now doing, and Luke, keep me honest on this one, right, is that a lot of them have a skills ontology that kind of comes with it. So if an organization wanted to leapfrog, they could say, let's just adopt a skills framework from the technology and start there as a point. So I think that to me is one way that AI can help with skills-based. And as you said, Tomas, it's probably an entirely different podcast at the time. But that to me would be probably a big leap. Luke, I don't know if you'd add anything onto that.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the topic well there. I think I would add on.
Yeah, definitely. We are going to discuss in the future more about skill-based organization audience. Please wait for that podcast as I confirm the dates with Nicole. Yeah, okay. Well, Nicole and Luke, last question. Well, I suppose that it is last question in the topics about artificial intelligence, because maybe we came up with a new ones. But I know, Nicole, that there is not a unique formula to implement artificial intelligence in talent acquisition process, but what are your recommendations for those who want to kick off an artificial intelligence project in talent acquisitions?
I will really let Luke answer that more in depth, but my short answer would be to ensure that you have really good use cases for what you're trying to solve for. and the measures that you're going to use to determine if AI is the right answer. Technology is just so incredibly cool right now that I see sometimes we have clients who are just, they're like children on Christmas morning, grabbing at every new shiny toy that there is. And sometimes, frankly, you don't need it. So that would be my short answer. Be sure that you have a really good business issue that you're trying to solve for, and that AI is the answer to how to solve it before you go forward.
When you asked the question, that's the first thing that popped into my head. It's the problem. Don't start with the solution being the AI, because often the answer to that problem might very well not be AI. So really research the problem, only then see, is AI a potential solution to that problem? And I think if you start with saying we want AI and without defining that problem, the likelihood of adoption success and the value that you're going to get from deploying that product is going to be very, very limited. And we've seen organizations, as Nicole mentioned, do that, and then it becomes a piece around change management and being able to bring that into the organization. And
got it. And definitely, audience, if as Nicole mentioned, if you we need to create this business case before to buy this new toy that is emerging in this toy market that is related with technology and artificial intelligence. But something, if you would like to create that a strong business case for your companies, I know that the Nicole and Luke could help you out to create that business case inside of your companies. They have a good experience and a great knowledge to provide that business case to decide what could be the better way to implement artificial intelligence or other stuff in talent acquisition field. Definitely. Thanks, team. Well, I think that this was my last question related with artificial intelligence. But as you know, I have a dynamic here in HRpreneur podcast relating, because the audience also wants to know more about about our guests. And that is the reason that I'm going to move forward with this personal questions activity that we do in this HRpreneur podcast. And with that, I'm going to start with Luke. And Luke, as you know, HRpreneur is a podcast that was born with these two intentions: provide insights about HR, but also entrepreneurship, because these two fields, it's something that is emerging in this new reality in our world. But Luke, I would like, with these personal questions, how do you live entrepreneurship in your field of expertise?
Yeah. So I would say within my role in the organization today, it's one of my favorite parts. It's really getting to be entrepreneurial. I get to help organizations creatively solve some of their TA problems. And it starts with helping, craft a vision. So if we think it to an entrepreneurial standpoint, it's creating that overarching vision. What is it that we want to accomplish? And then ultimately going and building upon that to develop the strategy that's going to deliver against that vision, creating the detailed plans, the roadmaps, the actions, the resources that are all involved in the design and configuration of the tools and deployment of them. So I think, each client has a unique need. So we get to partner together with them to develop bespoke solutions to meet that need. And that ability to be creative in the problem-solving approach and strategically solve problems is really, I think, something that I enjoy personally, being able to scratch that entrepreneurial itch that I definitely have.
Okay, thanks, Luke. And Nicole, our audience also, would you like to break the status quo in the day-to-day activities that they perform? But what is the best advice you got to break the status quo, and what impact did it have on your life? And how have you transferred this learning to break the fears in which human beings and companies stagnate?
I love change. So I'm going to age myself maybe a little bit, because I think I was in my late 20s when there was an Apple commercial and Steve Jobs said something like to the effect of, the people who are crazy enough to think that they can change the world are the ones that do. And then there was another quote that I kind of live by, and I honestly have no idea who said it, so I apologize. I can't give them the credit for it, but it went something like, the way that you become brave is one terrifying step at a time. And when I look back across my career, I think I've had some really diverse experiences, often doing things that frankly I had no idea how to do before the moment I tried. Because in a lot of ways I was crazy enough to think I could, and I was courageous enough to try, even if that meant I might fail miserably. And trust me, I have failed a lot in my career. And I think when you look at human behavior in general, we tend to think that there is safety in the status quo, when really the risk is staying stagnant, right? That is, sticking with the status quo is often the most risky position that there is. So I try to bring that perspective into conversations and really challenge people to be brave, if you will, to know that we very likely might fail, right? But there's such valuable learning in that failure. It's what helps us achieve greater things. And so I often liken myself, you two both have young children, but I liken myself to the 5-year-old. I'm always asking why or why not. Not to be argumentative, but really just to push people in the way that they think about things, and to hopefully just broaden that aperture about how we look to solve problems, by being, one terrifying step at a time, but by being courageous enough to do something different.
Got it. Thanks for your recommendations and your insight, Nicole. Definitely that will be so helpful for our audience to continue growing and to break the status quo, not continue the status quo, also take the risk to continue learning, definitely. And I really have been experienced that during this amazing partnership with you. Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
So thank you. Okay, I'm gonna move forward with other question for you, Luke. What recommendation would you give those who run an organization, an area, or an entrepreneurship to make a profound change truly?
Yeah, I think we spoke a little bit about this before relating to AI, and it's really to focus on the intended outcomes. So make sure you have that problem clearly defined. Look ahead to what outcome and what result you want to have based upon that change. And I think that's the foundation that you're going to carry forward. So once the problem and intended outcomes are defined, you can start the change management process by helping bring people along the journey of a project. Having a clearly defined problem statement helps them picture what you're trying to solve for. And having a clearly defined intended outcome allows them to start seeing where you're going. So this kind of is like reading the first chapter of a book and the last chapter of the book before you do everything in the middle. And that's what I think, to make that change and ease some of the change management that comes along with change, because not everybody is change positive as Nicole just let us know that she is really important, taking people along that journey. And those are some tips and tricks that I've done in the past that have been successful.
Got it. Thanks, Luke, for sharing that. And well, I know that we have completed our personal question, but our audience asking me or request me just to create a bonus question. So, and I would like that if some of you would you like to answer this question, because this is an important question for our audience. Maybe you can answer in a short way. It's not necessary to create a long answer, but our audience always is eager to hear what is the mission of your guests to grow organizations through a talent, in this case, a talent and tech strategy.
What is my mission to grow organizations through talent and tech strategy? I think first of all, and I don't know, I don't have a short answer for anything, Tomas. Maybe, but I do think this. Quite often, HR has been viewed like, if you have employees, then you have to have HR. And I think that for me, the mission is to understand that in HR, we are actually business leaders. who happen to have an expertise in talent. And so for me, I guess if I had to sum that up into a mission, is to make people realize that we exist to help the businesses achieve positive outcomes. And how do you do that? Through talent.
Got it. Thanks, Nicole. Luke, would you like to share some thoughts around this question for our audience?
Yeah, I think, looking from a mission standpoint, the mission, I think everything comes down to people and how can we make people be more successful in the impact that they can have and that they do within an organization. So when it comes to technology, it should go back to what is the experience that this is driving? What is it? How is it benefiting the recruiter? How is it benefiting the candidate? How is it benefiting the hiring manager? Because those are the people that are core to a business, and the lifeblood of every business is people. So making those experiences enriched through technology is something that I think is essential.
Well, many thanks for your answers. I know that our audience will be so happy to hear that answer during the podcast. Yeah, thanks. Well, with this last question, we have finalized this conversation with you, Nicole and Luke. And well, I really appreciate your sharing your knowledge of artificial intelligence and other cutting-edge talent topics during this conversation. And I'm so thankful that at the end of the podcast, our audience has a deeper and broader understanding of artificial intelligence and its impact on talent acquisition. And so please let us know where the audience can reach you to be in contact with you, because I'm pretty sure they would like to meet you. I don't know if you could share me. Yeah, Nicole.
Oh, how to get a hold of us? Should we just give you our emails as maybe the best way?
Yeah, email.
Mine is such a long last name that it's probably easier if we share it to them in writing.
Yeah, we are going to share that information, but if they can contact them through LinkedIn or other social networking, social media networking. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. I don't know, I'm pretty much everywhere. I even have older age children, so I'm on Snapchat and TikTok as well.
Got it. Thanks.
Embarrassingly so.
Got it. And yeah, I'm gonna take all that information, audience, and you will have in our description of this podcast. And Luke, please, where can
LinkedIn would be great. Happy to have anybody reach out, connect, send a message, but also AMS email. So Kohlrieser at weareams.com.
Got it. Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Nicole, again for spend this time with me in HRpreneur, and also spending this time with the HRpreneur audience, because as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, the audience will be so eager to listen not only the knowledge that our guests share through this platform, also to listen the experience and how our guests has been solved the problems in the day-to-day. Well, thanks again, and I hope to see you soon in another episode in this podcast, because I'm pretty sure that we are going to spend more time with our audience. Well, thank you, and see you soon.
Awesome.
Thanks, Tomas.
Thanks, Nicole.
Remember to connect with me on LinkedIn as Tomas Cortez, and on Instagram as Tomas H. Cortez. And tell me what other topics you would like to listen to in the coming weeks. We wish that HRpreneur becomes a community where you can learn how to create a human-centric vision and, at the same time, break the status quo. So please help us to achieve our purpose of inviting your friends to follow HRpreneur and to leave comments. Thanks for sharing your time with us, and we look forward to seeing you in our next episode to continue evolving.